Am I the asshole? For telling my brother I don't regret his fake funeral and he should be thanking our parents. My brother used to be an addict. Now when he was 21 he ended up in the hospital and my parents basically forced him to go to an extreme rehab. I won't say which to keep this anonymous. Now playing no, the rehab was hard. It had a you leave once we won't let you back in, had a ton of strict rules. One of the things they did was have the family give a funeral for their kids. We went in, didn't talk to him and he listened to us reading what we would say if he did die. It was a lot, but in the end it seems to have worked and he has been sober for 4 years now, 25 now. We were at family dinner and the topic was brought up. He got really upset with mom about it and it started an rant on his end about rehab. I had enough after he said she didn't love him to do that. I told him I don't regret his fake funeral and that he should be thanking mom and dad that he is alive. He left after calling Amy a jerk and I am unsure if I should apologize. Dad thinks he need to hear it since none of us regret it. Info: who brought the topic up during dinner? Not the asshole. Brother is definitely still an addict with an addict's brain. His resentment is going to cloud his recovery for as long as he lets it happen. Until he is able to let that go and realize that it was either rehab or dead, then he really isn't any better and hopefully is still seeing an addictions counselor or has a sponsor and goes to meetings. Be wary because it could just be because he's using again too. That fake funeral sounds strange as. I mean, I would like to know more info on the rehab. Some of the rehabs can be pretty messed up and borderline on abuse. Some are not regulated at all. He left after calling Amy a jerk and I am unsure if I should apologize. Dad thinks he need to hear it since none of us regret it. In other words, we did something terrible under the guise of helping you, but it made us feel better, so it doesn't matter how much it hurt you. The number one thing people in recovery sobriety need is support from their family, and y'all just made it clear that he doesn't have that. This is how relapses happen. Fully expect downvotes for this, but I have to say that very idea of a fake funeral where you all ignore him sounds so fucking dehumanizing and traumatic that I think he would have been perfectly justified in never speaking to you again. You say it helped. Who did it help exactly? Because it seems to have traumatized the person it's intended to. You're the asshole. 100. You're the asshole. I'm a recovered addict who's been to a very good rehab and this funeral thing sounds extremely fucked up to me. You're the asshole. There's some research out there that feeling connected to your loved ones and learning to be free of shame are good for addiction and help people heal and not relapse. This rehab clinic sounds toxic as hell and it might have traumatized him. I know addicts can hurt others, especially their family, but these things don't happen in a vacuum, and before you and your parents put all the blame on him, you all should take a close look at yourselves to see how you can be more empathetic and understand his perspective. To be frank, I've never heard of such a practice in any rehab ever, and would rather hear from therapists and psychologists who specialize in whether this is effective and not traumatizing long-term before giving a judgment. Because this seems really wild. Like I've been to the kind of fake funerals where the addict themselves gives a eulogy for their past self, saying goodbye to the addiction to move on, but I've never heard of having the addict sit in a room and have to witness their own funeral like this. You're the asshole. Yeah, you're the asshole, and so are your parents for participating in something so completely disgusting. How transparently do you need a rehab place to behave before you realize they're one of the unethical? Any additional trauma is fine if it redirects the original addiction temporarily. Place is not a legitimate treatment center. That technique is gross, you're gross for defending it, and he is more likely to relapse the longer you force him to be the only one carrying the trauma of the emotionally abusive circus you put him through that day. I get that a lot of the rehab therapy might have been very helpful for him and he should be grateful for that, yes, but it's also okay for him to state that some of it was traumatic and might have not been helpful towards his recovery. You're the asshole for trying to invalidate that. Dude, you're the asshole. I guess it worked, bro. It's been 4 years and you don't exactly seem close. Sounds like he sobered up in spite of the fake funeral and not because of it. Way to make yourselves the main characters of his life, though. In the extremely unlikely event you gaff if your brother lives or dies, you might want to look into what evidence-based studies say about successful ways to talk to and interact with an addict. You sound like you're trying to get him to relapse. You're the asshole. You're invalidating his feelings. It also doesn't sound like the theatrics of a fake funeral did shit for him during the recovery process. Continuing to invalidate his feelings on this issue will only make things more difficult for him. Nah, it's both possible that the intervention helped him and that he was hurt by it. He has been able to manage his addiction because of choices he made. Rehab was an opportunity, but he took advantage of it to become healthier. Holding a funeral and not letting him speak is pretty effed up, and I could understand him feeling it was abusive. You're the asshole. You didn't attend that rehab. You have no idea what went on there. Your parents may have had the best of intentions, but that doesn't mean it was actually as helpful as you believe and not traumatic. You'd be amazed how many rehabs are, in fact, abuse centers and not based on any valid psychological methods at all. Was your brother's experience bad? Heck if I know. He's the only one qualified to say not me, and definitely not you. That sounds extremely traumatic for him. You don't get to decide his lived experience. I'm pretty sure he knows his addiction and recovery better than you. AITA. You think this is a right or wrong situation, huh? You said things. They hurt him. If you don't give a fuck about him, then cool, just be honest about it. Thinking you could do that and he should just get over it because you cared is asinine. If beating the shit out of you was the only way to save you from something, you still got the shit beat out of you. You're the asshole. 1. Your family has no right to stop your brother from talking about how he feels. 2. One of the things they did was have the family give a funeral for their kids. We went in, didn't talk to him, and he listened to us reading what we would say if he did die. Do you not hear how fucked up that sounds? You're the asshole. Dad thinks he needed to hear since none of us regret it. Gross. I loved an addict who is no longer here. What you did is not only disrespectful to others, but it was also traumatizing for your brother, the addict. Instead of listening to how he feels about it, you dismiss him. BC the funeral was therapeutic for you. Your family isn't as wholesome as you seem to think. Get off your high horse. You all suck. You're the asshole. First, once an addict always an addict. He's a recovering addict. Second, you invalidated his experience by refusing to listen and trying to force your narrative on him. Lastly, this is a crappy and ineffective tool. Seriously, who came up with this? Emotional abuse as therapy. Absolute BS. To me that rehab sounds abusive. Like, I get parents were desperate and brother was troubled. But the rehab sounds like one of those places that are abusive. You're the asshole. Can't imagine how traumatic that must have been for him. You're the asshole. That funeral was good for you. He's made it clear it was not good for him. This makes you and the family wrong for your reaction. There is zero evidence that the funeral is what happened. It's a crappy therapy tool. Y'all should apologize. You're the asshole. You know you are an asshole. This man finally feels comfortable enough around you after you tortured him 4 years ago to start to tell you how much you hurt him, and you shut him down immediately. I hope you enjoyed the funeral because it was the only chance you will get to say goodbye to your brother again once he stops talking to you. Info: could you tell us what happened in the rehab and just what this fake funeral was like? Did he explain why he was so upset by these things during the rant? That being said, rehabs will sometimes do fucked up traumatic things that they have no business doing. Some have the mindset that they need to totally break you down, which may work for some and damage others. Forced treatment doesn't work and causes harm, so yes. AITA. You're the asshole. If his perspective as a sober person, 4 years later, is that this rehab was abusive and cruel, I believe him.